Right. Hello and welcome to the Old Sword Club weekly HEMA lesson thing workshop. I don't know what to call these, but they're weekly and they're weekly, and the Old Sword Club runs them. So yeah, we are experiencing a bit of a weird technical issue tonight in that my trusty phone has decided that it no longer wants to spin onto landscape. So this is going to be all done in portrait format. But yeah, tonight we're going to look at 19th century pugilism or boxing, um, and also look a little bit at 19th century self-defense. Just because, like in the 19th century, like even if you were a self-defense, like very self-defense orientated in your martial arts practice, combat sports like boxing, wrestling, savate, fencing, even still formed the basis of your practice. And there's this sort of this sense for the 19th century where they're realizing that, sort of not all training and not all fencing is good for, self-defense or dueling or whatever. But the way it was viewed in the 19th century was the difference between, say, what you do in the gym or the fencing cell, what you do in a self-defense situation, and what you do in a duel, and what you do on a battlefield if you're a soldier, was not a question of style or even technique like it sort of is today, but rather a question of tactics and application. So for this workshop, I primarily I read over sort of two sources in kind of preparation for it. Because it's been a few years since I've done bare knuckle prior. The first being this one, Major Elliott's Art of Attack and Defense. This is, as much as I forgot the name of the book as soon as I stepped into the workshop, I remembered to bring the book this time, so it's all good. This is just a fairly simple manual. Major Elliott is disclosing sort of what were the standard methods taught in the military in his day. So if you want to get an idea of what the average person was taught, I do recommend Major Elliott. The advantage he has over drill manuals, like say actually going to the drill manuals directly, which you can do, is that Elliott is a bit more succinct, and he also has a lot of diagrams. So as much as what he's expressing is very, very standard and normal, the way he expresses it is probably a bit more articulate. But he gives very, very standard kind of military boxing, and actually very standard boxing for the day, sort of thing that 80–90% of gyms would have taught. The other person I've looked at is Thomas Hoyer Monstrie. And self-defense for ladies or for gentlemen and ladies is actually a compilation of articles he wrote for various magazines rather than necessarily a book he wrote. Which becomes a little more frustrating when he goes through and he says, "Oh, and one day I'll write of the Spanish knife, and one day I'll write about Bowie knife, and one day I'll write about these weapons that he personally practiced, but never actually wrote down his method for." The reason I didn't do everything from Monstrie is because what he teaches in terms of boxing is not the standard or the most normal system. It's kind of very specific to him. And I think with HEMA, there's this tendency to focus on more exotic or less common methods, from historical periods, and neglect that what the average fencer or the average boxer was doing was a bit different. And I mean, this criticism could be extended to Bartitsu, which was maybe was still a fairly significant club when it was running. But was not necessarily representative of what the majority of martial arts were doing in the period. So same to some extent goes for defense Dans LaRue. Really, and you can extend that to people like Sir William Hope, to a lesser degree Alfred Hutton. What else? Alfred Hutton's fencing system is a little bit different to standard saber fencing of the day, although not to the same degree. But one of the big reasons why I went to Monstrie is that he gives a lot of really good detail in terms of specific things you can do, and I do recommend his manual really for any kind of boxer, because he's got a lot of drills designed to develop certain skills that are very, very important to bare knuckle boxers. And also, Monstrie is very much a self-defense boxer. He says, Like he says what he does is different to what is done in the prize fights. Although he also says that what he does would, what he does is too dangerous for prize fights, which I think is maybe a little bit exaggeratory. But he still does give a lot of really good advice about hand movement, particularly his drills for fist conditioning, like learning how to essentially align your fist so that you can punch someone bare knuckle. Quite good. So what we're going to do from here is I'm just going to go through section by section, talking about bare knuckle boxing. I'm just going to talk about the really, really basic techniques of period boxing, and then at the end I'm going to start talking about some of the sort of the self-defense scenarios that they discussed in the period, like some of the sorts of things that they thought that you should be able to deal with. And sort of things that self-defense manuals in the period do say to do. Right. So anyway, I'm just going to pause recording for a sec so we can break this up to the sections, and then we're going to get going.